if you go into next season, can you have Swayman making more than Ullmark? I think it's a real question. And I think the Bruins, if they don't deal Ullmark, are going to maybe try to make that case. Now, a fair price for Swayman is 6 years, 6 million. Like, I think that's a very fair deal. I think he has the case for even more. And welcome into the Bruins Beat on CLNS Media. My name is Evan Marinofsky. Hope you guys are having a great day, a great week. And on this episode, it's just us. It's just me and you. I haven't done this in a while. A mailbag episode where we dive into your questions. It's interesting. You get guests on so much and you hear their takes, you give yours, but when I tweeted out that I was doing a mailbag episode, I was curious, like, what are you guys interested in? What do you think? And sometimes I read the YouTube comments. Sometimes I do check out the YouTube comments, the nice stuff, the not so nice stuff, and that's always fun. You guys are funny down there. But I tweeted this out on Wednesday night and wanted to kind of get your questions, what you guys are thinking about. And what's funny is every time I tweet one of these, there's always that little part of me that's like, ooh, what if nobody answers? It's like, when you're in high school, it's like, what if nobody sits with me at lunch, or you're in, elementary or middle school, like, oh God. But thankfully you guys delivered as you always have and always do, and hopefully always continue to do. So I got your questions and I'll answer them. Again, this is being recorded prior to Thursday night's game, so I don't have any takes for you on that, but fortunately, I think we're recording a couple podcasts on Friday. And we will get back to just a programming note. We will get back to the regular schedule of Bruins Beat next week. I was away last weekend. The weekend before was Christmas. So the schedule of Bruins Beat has been very spotty the last 2 weeks. I promise it will go back to normal with it coming out Tuesday and either Thursday or Friday of next week. So you can look forward to that. And sometimes you just need a little break. But we are back in. So anyways, let's dive into the questions. I don't want to hold you guys up any longer. So our first question comes from Connor Ryan. Why didn't you go to the M&M store in NYC like I asked? It's a good question, Connor. Don't know who this Connor Ryan is. But NYC was great. I'd never been before. Saw a lot of the city, saw the World Trade Center, saw the Empire State Building, Wall Street, different sections and neighborhoods. I did go to Times Square the night before New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, I stayed the hell away from Times Square. It was still a zoo, even the night before New Year's Eve. Yeah, New York City was great. Finally went. I know it's been an ongoing thing in this podcast. I'd never been in New York City, and that's done now. So we'll have to find somewhere new that I need to go see. Recommend some places. YouTube comments, tweet at me. What should my next venture be? Maybe outer space. Maybe outer space will be the answer. Frank the Tank Enjoyer says, thinking. I'll get back to you. Oh, well, Frank the Tank Enjoyer never got back to me with a question. So hopefully, maybe he'll make the next mailbag. All right. Anyways, let's get into the real Bruins questions. I know people are like, get on with it, Evan. Stay on track. So I'm trying my best to stay on track. And as always, before we dive into the Bruins questions, this podcast is brought to you by Fanduel and our good friends over at HelloFresh. I love both. You love both. On YouTube, you can see the promo codes. So anyways, let's dive in. Clark Stewart Event says, he asks a couple questions. He says, where do you see Matt Poitras playing when he gets back from the World Junior? Also, any word on Derek Forbort and his return? JVR, money for money or dollar for dollar, might be the best signing of the offseason. And do you think Sway will sign soon? 6x6 question mark. So let's break that down into the 4 parts that it is. Where do you see Matt Poitras playing when he gets back from the World Juniors? Instinctively, I would say third line center, right? You'd have Zacha, Coyle, and Poitras as your 3 centers, but they've won 4 straight with Geekie in the top 6. We'll get to Geekie more later. I don't love the idea of Geekie being a top 6 center. if this team is to really contend, but he's looked solid at 5-on-5, and there's something there. Is he a Coyle or Zaka caliber center? No, probably not, but there is something there. Um, so I don't want to see Patra on the wing. That's not what I would love. I think for his development, I think his two-way game is really strong. I think he's better down the middle. So again, it kind of comes down to where does he fit? Now, maybe you go back to, JVR, Coyle, and Frederick, and then you move Patra in up where Coyle had been playing before, and you move him in with guys like Marchand and DeBrusque. Um, and you try to see if that works out. But that again, that's a lot of line juggling. It's funny because Patra left when they were starting to stumble, and now they're not. The Bruins are good, and they seem to kind of be finding their groove. So again, I want him down the middle, and I don't want him on the fourth line. So you want him somewhere in that top nine down the middle. Maybe you move Geeky back to the wing. Zaka's looked solid on the wing, though. That's the other thing. Is like I think I've liked Zaka on the wing. Him and Pastrnak work well together. So again, I don't know. I think it's somewhere in that top nine, down the middle. I think that's sort of the biggest thing. And I talked about this with Hags a little bit on his last podcast. I don't think we're going to be looking back going, man, the World Juniors, what a mistake. Bruins never should have sent him. I think it's fine. Like I do. And I think it's a big deal. It's a big event, let him go. Any word on Derek Forbort and his return? Well, I don't have any new inside information, unfortunately. I cannot be Adam Schefter on this. I can only tell you what Montgomery said recently, saying that, he's still a ways away. He's not day to day. At one point, we gave him 5 days off and it was doing well, but the 9 games in 16 days, just repetitive demands on the body. It's come back, and we're going to give him a little extended time to try to nip this for the rest of the year. I'm fine with that. I don't mean to be like Mr. Pro Bruin, but like, give him as much time as you need. We'll get to Lowry, Grizzly, them in a bit, but like, it's fine. It's the middle of the season. You're in first place. Give him the rest he needs, because when the playoffs come around, if you want a deep run, Forbort does fit the mold of a playoff defenseman you want in your lineup. You're not the fastest, not the most skilled, not the best puck mover, but he's big. He can shut things down. He's good on the PK, all those things, physical. And I think you do need that in your lineup. So I think I don't have anything new for you, though, on Forbort's return. JVR dollar for dollar might be the best signing of the offseason. So yeah, I agree. 1 year, $1 million for Van Riemsdyk was strong. I mean, you think about back then during free agency, and there was a lot of outrage from Bruins fans about, oh my God, why aren't they immediately replacing Bergeron and Krejci? Like, you couldn't with the overages, with the lack of cap space. Also, the other thing is, in free agency, and I've talked about this before, in free agency, most times you're not looking to find a pillar of your roster. You are simply looking to get value guys, adding a piece here or there. We need a second pair right shot defenseman. Okay, free agency can do that. We need a depth scorer on the third line. Free agency can do that. Where free agency typically misses and teams swing hard and miss hard is, oh, my team needs a number one center. Let's go get a guy in free agency and hope he can be that. The best players get re-signed. It's so rare that a guy like Tavares or Gaudreau hit the free agency market. It just doesn't happen that often. You look at the crop of free agents, even in 2024, and there's not many who are, could hit it. Obviously you have guys like Elias Lindholm. But you don't have that many that are franchise changing. And Van Riemsdyk, to me, like, for 1 year, $1 million, even at the time, even if he was producing half of what he's doing now, I mean, he's fourth on the Bruins in scoring. And I think he's like number one in primary assists at 5-on-5 or something. I saw Scott McLaughlin tweet. Like, for what, I agree. I think he's the best value signing in this crop, because he's been a guy that whoever you put him with, he's produced power play, playing. I mean, again, like right now, or the other night, he was, Frederick was in the middle of Van Riemsdyk. So like he's producing with anybody. And I think he's such a good passer, such a strong passer. So I agree. I think Van Riemsdyk has been a phenomenal value signing, and he's going to be getting a payday next season. So enjoy this while you have it. It's like the Bergeron and Krejci contracts of last year.
Score early this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Do you think Sway will sign soon? 6x6. This is a great question. And someone else asked about Swayman signing, and I think, someone asked me in my DMs. They slid in my DMs. They got right on in those DMs, down in the DMs. They got in there and asked about Swayman. So this is an interesting topic because it's one that we have not touched on much this year. Because again, it's the middle of the season. He is under contract. Signed that he had to go to arbitration, signed the 1 year, I think it's $3.745 million deal in the offseason. Obviously worth a lot more now, and he was even then. I was of the, again, they didn't have a ton of cap room this offseason, so you did have to do that. I think in a perfect world, you would have locked Swayman up to somewhere in the 4 or 5 year range this past offseason for 4 million, 4.5, maybe 5, and kind of hope that he lives up to that and that looks cheap when the end of that contract hits 4 to 5 years down the line. Obviously, they really couldn't do that because of the salary cap. So now they're going to be on the hook for more. 6x6 is not crazy. And it's funny. I pulled up goalie contracts on Spot Track to see like, okay, well, what are other players making? Connor Hellebuck right now is making $8.5 million a year. I don't think Swayman's at that level yet. Soroka's making $8.25 million a year. I don't know if he's there, but like Philip Grubauer is making 5.9. Elvis Merzlikins is making 5.4. Tristan Jarry is making 5.375. Darcy Kemper 5.25. This is just per year. Matt Murray signed 6.25 per year, which is awesome. Or this was he's on that current contract now. He's getting for sure, I think, over those players. Has to. I mean, he's better than almost all of those guys I just mentioned. Grubauer, Merzlikins, Jarry, Kemper. I take Swayman over all those guys. His camp is going to make that argument, and they're right to do it. I think the Bruins counter argument, it's an interesting one, is Linus Ullmark makes $5 million. Now, Linus Ullmark, signed that deal in 2021. So again, a lot has changed. When Linus Ullmark goes to sign his deal next offseason, he's going to make a lot more than $5 million, especially at, I think, 27 years old. Or is he 27? I got to look this up. It says on here 27, but I feel like he's older. Maybe I think he's older just because Swayman is young. Linus Ullmark is 30. Linus Ullmark is 30. Swayman's 25. They signed Ullmark when he was 27. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Anyways, I do think that Ullmark thing will come into play. We're like going into next year, if both goalies are still here, if they don't trade Ullmark, which surprisingly, I don't think I got one question about trading Linus Ullmark, which is incredible, but we've talked about it so much that I think you know my position on it. If you go into next season, can you have Swayman making more than Ullmark? I think it's a real question. And I think the Bruins, if they don't deal Ullmark, are going to maybe try to make that case. Now, a fair price for Swayman is 6 years, $6 million. Like, I think that's a very fair deal. I think he has the case for even more because he is clearly I think a future, definite #1 starter in the NHL. A guy that can platoon. Now the question is like, what's he going to do in the playoffs this season? I think that's sort of the last shoe to drop thing to understand with Swayman is like, what are you getting out of him in the playoffs? So again, right now, like, I mean, Hellebuck's contract he signed in 2018, which again, years ago now, was 6 years, 6.166 million. And that was back then. I know that was back then, but I would expect Swayman to come around that. Like, and I think he more than earned it. Is Swayman gonna move into the upper tier of Sorokin and Hellebuck's current contract? And like, is he gonna touch Bobrovsky? Like, I don't think so. Sweeney's usually very good at re-signing his own guys. So again, I think it's gonna be somewhere around that 6 years, um, you know, 6.5 million. That would be my guess. And he's worth it. I think he's proved he's worth it. I think he has the mentality to be a very strong goalie, whether he's playing 45 games a year or 55 or 60 games a year. I think he has a good mentality. That's why I want to see the goalie tandem work in the playoffs, but I also want to see him extended in the playoffs. I want to see what he has come postseason time. So I that's where I stand with the Swayman stuff. I'm curious to get more into that with like Connor and Ty and Connor Ryan and Ty Anderson, if you've heard of them. Maybe you haven't. I don't know. Maybe you don't know who these people are. But I am curious to get back into that. So yeah, Swayman, 6 years, 6.5. That would be my guess. CJ Kelly asks, do you see the Bruins not making any major moves at the trade deadline and instead waiting until the summer so they can see how this roster does in the playoffs? What do you think will be Patra's first game back? Well, first, I just saw on Twitter at practice on Thursday, so I'm curious to see if they use him against the Penguins. There's no word on that yet. So again, I'm recording this in the early afternoon, so I don't quite know the answer for that to you yet. Your first question, do you see the Bruins not making any major moves at the trade deadline and instead waiting until the summer so they can see how this roster does in the playoffs? I think that's the smarter move. I don't think, definitely no major moves. I don't, again, unless a player, it's like a Taylor Hall deal where Elias Lindholm says, I only want to go to Boston. I will, then okay, like then maybe. But to me, you don't have the assets, and you cannot keep giving up future assets. The only way that I'm fine with them giving up big future assets is if you get someone in return who's going to be a long-term part of your plan. If you can get Lindholm and then re-sign him or sign him to a long-term deal, then it's okay, right? Like, then that makes sense. The Hampus Lindholm trade, right? You get a guy, you deal off firsts and prospects, but you get a guy back who you would hope to draft in the first round, a long-term potential top pairing left shot defenseman. So I don't see any major moves at the deadline. I'm with you, CJ. I want to see how this roster does in the playoffs. I do want to see, and maybe that's because my expectations for this team were not cup contenders. I do want to see a guy like Patra in the playoffs. I want to see Johnny Beecher. I want to see Lil Mason Lowry. I want to see these guys in the playoffs, and I want to see what they look like in the playoffs post Bergeron and Krejci. I think it's a real question. Remember Coyle and Zaka were terrific last year in the top six against Florida early in that series. What will they be like? I think Charlie Coyle is playing the best hockey of his career right now. Let me say that for the record. Like, I think Charlie Coyle is phenomenal right now. Point production's there. Two-way game is there. Just everything. I think he stepped in. I think he's been awesome. So I want to see this roster in the playoffs, and I want to see the goalie tandem in the playoffs. I know Felger disagrees with me on this. I know that many of you out there listening might disagree with me on this. I want to see it because maybe that's just left over from last year of like, come on, that was your chance. But to me, I just go back to I don't think, and the other thing is the future assets. You can't keep giving up future assets, and you need to find a way to get firsts. Joe Haggerty and I talked about this on Wednesday. Like, yeah, it's great that Lowry and Beecher and Patra and Lauko and guys like that are graduating to the big club. That's awesome, but you do need to replace those guys in the prospect pool. And you need to you need an infusion of high end talent. And I think that getting back into the first and second rounds would help you do that. The question is how. But yeah, I don't think any major moves at the deadline. CJ, I do not see any there. Someone asked, and I got to get their at Rye_guy35 said, with Grizz being lackluster and Lowry clearly making an impact on his second stint with the team, do they keep him up? I've liked Lowry in his second go round. I was not as big on Lowry in his first. I thought his defensive game lacked. I thought there were some issues there in his own zone, defending the rush, things like that you do need to figure out at the NHL level. The offensive confidence was there. The puck moving abilities were there. It was just kind of what I just mentioned, the D zone stuff. I've liked him a lot more, as I said, in this second go around. And I agree. Grzelcyk has not been his usual self. You wonder how much, whether it be trade rumors or his future, is kind of hanging over him. You never know how much that affects a player, especially a guy who, do you guys know Matt Grzelcyk was born around here? He's from the area, from Charlestown. And again, him and McAvoy have not had the impact that they've had in past years. I've liked Grzelcyk with Shattenkirk on that third pairing. But the question is, again, when Forbort comes back, if you have Lowry in the lineup and he is fitting, you don't need Grzelcyk and Lowry in the same lineup come the playoffs when you have heavy teams and you're getting beat up. Like, you just don't need that. And again, I think Lowry is on that upward trajectory that Grzelcyk at the moment doesn't seem to be on. So yeah, I think they probably do keep Lowry up unless his defensive game struggles. And then it's kind of like, all right, dude, go play a ton in Providence, and we'll see you back later in the season. But he's been great. I again, the offensive stuff is always there with him. That's never my worry. I don't worry about Lowry offensively. Kid used to be a freaking forward. Like, and he's fine. But it's defensively, and I think it's been better. And I think with McAvoy, I'm curious to see how that pairing evolves. It's funny, a lot of times, and I fall in this category too, a D pair will go together for a game, or a forward line will go together for a game. They don't play well. It's like, oh, they don't work. And it's like, well, they just need time. Like, you look at Kevin Shattenkirk, and Montgomery mentioned this the other day. Like, Shattenkirk was rough at the beginning of the year. He came from Anaheim, where there were a lot of defensive problems. They played played man coverage in the D zone, which I don't know why. That team is not good. I think you only play man when your team is nasty and you're better. Like, you're winning every matchup. But that's what they did, and they weren't very good. And now he's in Boston, and it took him a little time to adjust. And now he's adjusted. He's scoring. He's fitting in better. Some guys take time. So that's why the Lowry McAvoy pairing, intrigues me going forward. So that's my answer on that. Slimed Cheese, which is a great name. Slimed Cheese, which is a funny at Slim Thick Dumper, which is a great Twitter name, asks, is Montgomery's forte of benching the kids in big moments of concern to you for their development? This I could do a whole podcast on, and we've spent a lot of time with this. So I don't want to go on and on about this, but maybe I will. Maybe I still will. I am fine with Jim Montgomery benching Georgi Merkulov in the third period, right when he comes up from Providence. I am fine with, in a game against Dallas or Toronto, shortening the bench and going to Coyle and Zaka down the middle and using, the lines and D that you trust most, because you got to get 2 points and it's an important win. I'm fine with that. Like, and I think you need, and in the NHL, you need to earn the right to play in crunch time. The best players play that. It's not always the young guys. And again, if this Bruins team was middle of the pack, or God forbid, like bottom 10, yeah, I'd say throw Poitras out there in the final minute of games. Throw Merkulov out there. Like, put Lowry in front of the net when you're defending a lead and it's 6-on-5. Sure, like, go do it. But they're first in the Atlantic, and They are trying to get points. They are trying to win. And they are also trying to get guys like Coyle and Zaka ready for those crunch time moments when the playoffs come around. Because those guys, when Bergeron and Krejci were here, they were not always the guys out there. Now they're the guys. And you need to get them ready during the regular season. Now they've had their ups and downs. They obviously have had some problems. I'm not saying Coyle and Zaka, but the whole team has had problems defending leads late in games. I get that, but you do need reps at that. And Montgomery's going to go with the guys he trusts. Now, in a game against like Arizona, who I know is better this year, but they're still the Coyotes, or at teams that are not as good, I would like to see some of those younger guys get out there in those, the Ford F-150 final five and different parts of the third period. But I get that, the NHL is about winning games. I get that, and I understand that, and I agree with it. This is a team that the Bruins are doing their best to try to have a bridge year, but a bridge year where they win. So you're getting those younger guys like Beecher and Lowry and Patra and Lauko and Dorstein in there and I don't even know if I mentioned Lowry, like all those young guys. You're trying to get them reps, but you're trying to win games too. And they're doing that so far. It's kind of like the Ben Affleck picture that it just released. Unfortunately, Connor Ryan's not here to comment on this. He will soon. But it's sort of like the Ben Affleck picture of him holding the dunks, where he's like trying to hold it all together. Like that's sort of the Bruins. Like you're trying to hold this weird season together where you are getting young guys ready for the future and getting them reps, but you're also trying to win games. And it's like you're holding like, you get your dozen donuts, you maybe got a couple breakfast sandwiches, you have a couple coffees on there, and they're in the styrofoam container, so it's like steady but not really, and you're like holding it and hoping it just doesn't fall over. And it hasn't fallen over yet. It hasn't. It's not like the end of the Ben Affleck sequence where he always drops everything he has. But to me, again, I think that's them. They're holding it together right now, and I don't see them dropping it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that little analogy. We'll do more of those. I'm not gonna get off on the Affleck tangent because you guys are gonna be annoyed with that, as you should be. Quick break in the action to tell you about our delicious friends over at HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. A crazy schedule can make it easy to fall back into your dinner time recipe rut, but keep mealtime exciting with over 40 recipes to choose from every week. There's always something delicious to discover with HelloFresh. Turn to HelloFresh Market for yummy add-ons and enjoy the season's limited time fall flavors lineup. It's that time of year, right? Things get you in the mood, like apple cider cake with caramel sauce. All the ingredients come fresh, from the crushed tomatoes to the Italian chicken sausage mix to the Parmesan cheese. It's delicious, and I feel like a chef when I'm doing it. What's better than that? And this is a busy time of year for me with hockey starting up. I don't always have a ton of time, so this recipe makes it quick to enjoy something amazing. So join in on the fun. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Bruins and use code 50Bruins for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com/50Bruins and use code 50Bruins for 50% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Now, back to the show. Daniel McKay asks, if the Bruins had to, what enforcer-style player would you like the Bruins to acquire? We have lots of tough guys, but there's definitely the lack of a big dude who can hurt people when they mess with their top players. And then he asks, what teams could give the Bruins trouble in the playoffs? So I'll answer the first one because I'll answer both, but the first one I'll spend a lot of time on. Obviously Lucic was supposed to be that guy. He is not that guy and shouldn't be that guy going forward for obvious reasons. An enforcer style, it always goes back to Tom Wilson for me. And I know people are about, hey, Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson can contribute offensively. Now, the contract he got in the offseason was ludicrous. Do not spend that on anybody like that. But you do want a guy like that on your roster, a guy who plays on the edge, who, again, he's not dropping the gloves every game, but he is a threat. And he is someone that is going to finish his hits. He is going to make defenders be a little more hesitant when they're going back for pucks. And he's going to contribute offensively. That's the kind of guy you want. Now, obviously, you're not going to go out and get him at the deadline. He's signed long term. The Capitals are contending. I saw the Capitals, by the way, on Friday night when I was in New York. They're playing the Islanders. UBS Arena, by the way, gorgeous facility. What exactly does Alex Ovechkin do outside scoring goals? Like, again, I saw him one game, and that's the one time I've seen him in person this year. So again, forgive me, I haven't seen every Capitals game, but my God, like there's not much going on there outside of scoring goals. And he didn't score any and didn't really come close scoring any on Friday. But geez. But yeah, that's the kind of guy you want. Now it's hard to go out and get that because you need guys who contribute. It's a different NHL now. Your fourth line right now is Lauko, Beecher, Steen. Ideally, that would be an area where you would go out and get a veteran guy who can play in your bottom six, who can contribute. Like that's what you need. I don't think anyone who could play in your top six that can do like what a Tom Wilson can do is going to cost you too much. That's too coveted. Everybody wants that guy. You've got to find the guy in the bottom six who, as I said, can be a positive influence on a guy like Beecher and Lauko and be able to pass and shoot. Like that's really what you need. I don't have any names for you off the top of my head on this. So again, I'll get back to you on some names on that. But that's what you need. That's what you don't need the goon. You don't need a goon. A goon is not going to detract someone, but you do need someone that, as I said, can do all those things that I mentioned. Team-wise, for teams that could cause fits for the Bruins in the playoffs, Florida, by the way, is number 2 in the Atlantic right now, 4 points behind you. Now, again, as of now, you would not face them in the first round. I look at a team like Philadelphia as the first wild card doesn't really scare me. Just because, again, I know they're doing really well this year, and they've got a guy like Couturier who's difficult to play against, but they're not a team that I'm overly worried about. New Jersey in the second spot in that second wild card, which is who you would play right now, by the way, kind of does, because New Jersey has the talent. Now, in net, I don't know what they are doing. I'm not a fan of their plan in net. It doesn't make sense. They needed goalies so bad, but they're making their kicks at the can. This is the beginning of that core of the two Hughes brothers and Heischer and those guys. So they're sort of where you were a little bit in the mid 2000s. Mid to late 2000s. So they're a little scary in the sense that they've been in the playoffs, and they are in those early stages. Can they win a round? Can they be the 2010 Bruins beating the Sabres? I don't know. So that's a team that would scare me a bit. The Islanders are boring, but again, they typically find ways to win. So that's one. The Rangers have everything. I'm surprised. To me, that's a team that, they have the goaltending. They have firepower up front. Panarin, Zibanejad, Chris Kreider. They have a good, solid D-core that, again, like, you got a guy like Trouba in a playoff series. Like, can you imagine how much Bruins fans would hate Trouba even more in a playoff series? And again, it's not looking like you're going to play them in the first or even the second round. But again, that's a team that I think the Rangers do have what it takes to go deep. It's just like, are they mature enough on the back end to win multiple 7-game series? And then again, like people always look at the top teams and it's like, oh, and the Rangers are a top team right now, but like Carolina struggled for parts this year, but they're knocking on the door. You look at a team like Tampa. Tampa's a 1 point out of the playoffs as of Thursday afternoon. And again, they're a team that uh, you know, that that's had a lot of success and that has a lot of playoff pedigree. Like, what if you face them in the first round, as if they're a wild card? If the Bruins fall to second in the Atlantic and they end there, or third and play like Toronto, that's another one. Like, Toronto did win a playoff round last year, so you do have to take that into consideration. So I know that was kind of everybody, but this goes back to the bigger point I've said the whole time. I don't view the Bruins as this powerhouse Stanley Cup contender. I don't view them like that. Other people might, national people might, because they just might look at the standings and the points and guys like that. But like, they have holes. Again, their advantages in net. If Swayman and Olmark are able to successfully alternate the net and dominate the way they do during the regular season, the Bruins will be a cup contender. And if they can have supplementary scoring that can win games 3-2, 4-3, 2-1, yeah, they'll go deep. But if one of those things isn't there, you're gonna have a tough time. So that's why I'm wary of everybody. And maybe it's just the side effect of last season. Like, oh God, everything's scary now. But again, that's where I go to on that. Rob Plowinski, who has a cute dog as his profile picture, says, "Is Freddie better at center than on the wing?" I would rather Frederick on the wing. I think that they've sort of grown him into that. I think his game is good when my take on it is you can do a little more physically, be a little more physically imposing on the wing as a center, and not to be like Mr. I'm going to explain hockey to you, hockey 101, Coach Evan, we're going to diagram everything up. We're going to diagram some plays. My take on it, and people might disagree with me on this, is when you're a wing, you can get more in on the physicality a little more. You're not, you're not as concerned with every single part of the ice. When you're the center, you go everywhere. You go everywhere in the D zone. You go everywhere in the offensive zone. You go everywhere in the neutral zone. Like, you are the guy as the center. You're sort of the straw that stirs the drink. So it's hard, I think, to then, lay a bunch of hits and, be the pest that Frederick can be. So I would rather him be on the wing. And I think they have a lot of depth at center with Geeky and Zaka and Coyle and Patra and Beecher. And I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. So I think he's fine on the wing, and he's had success on the wing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But again, it goes back to, like, he's been okay at center these past couple games. So, but again, I go back to keep him on the wing. Trigger asks, is Grizz playing his worst hockey this season? Yeah, probably. And I don't, it's not bad. I've been unimpressed with him and McAvoy, which is why why you would put him in the top four, would be that pairing. And it just hasn't been there this year. So I would say probably, yeah. But again, there's a lot hanging over him. Boston Bruins watcher asks, how many 40-goal seasons would Brandon Carlo have if Monty had the courage to play him at 1C? This is a great question. I think if Montgomery doesn't move Brandon Carlo to the first center spot, goodbye. Get a new coach in here. Montgomery, out the door. Could have a lot of 40-goal seasons. They should do one game a year. One game a year. If a team, how like in the NFL and even in the NHL, they rest guys, like there was that game, the Bruins played the Capitals, I'll never forget it. It was that 2021 COVID shortened season. It was against the Caps, end of the last game of the year. Bruins obviously were well in the playoffs, and they played like their Providence Bruins lineup. They should do a game every year where they have like Brandon Carlo as, like, as you said, first line center. Charlie McAvoy, like first line right wing. Put Georgi Merkulov as like your first pairing defenseman, like go crazy. Let Swayman and Olmark play out, let position players play in net. They should do like an exhibition between local teams. They should do that. Honestly, they should do it just for fun, maybe a preseason thing. But again, you don't want guys getting hurt. So that would be a detractor to that. You don't want, Brad Marchand in net, tearing his groin because he's trying to go post to post to stop, Jeremy Swayman one-timer. But yeah, he'd have a lot of 40-goal seasons. Brendan Carlo, outstanding. He'd be great. Len Berkowitz asks, will the experiment using Geeky on the power play ever end? That decision looks awful. Yeah, I mean, again, I would rather Geeky not be on the power play either, but he's worked his way into being a legitimate player for them. Not power play, I agree. As of right now, again, if he continues to work, if he starts bursting out on it, then my opinion will change. But I agree with you. I think, and it goes back to like, are the Bruins Cup contenders if Morgan Geeky or Danton Heinen are in that top six? Probably not. Probably not. Um, and maybe you can go into the playoffs with Geeky, Coyle, and Patra as your top, your centers in the top nine, and it's sort of like Geeky and Patra's line are 2A and 2B. Fine, but I still I don't know. I just maybe again like Fluto Shinzawa wrote this, and I agree. If you're going to add something at the deadline, which Ryan at Ryan J7800 kind of asks, if you're going to add something at the deadline, do you go for a wing because it's going to be cheaper? Maybe you put Zaka back down the middle, you put Coyle down the middle, and you have Patra down the middle, and that's your 1, 2, 3. And you go out and you add a wing, so you can do your wings on that top six are then DeBrusque, Marchand, Pasternak, and person you go out and get. Hopefully, I'm not forgetting anybody. So Ryan asks, would Sweeney trade Poitras for Elias Lindholm? If the Bruins continue to underperform in the playoffs, will Sweeney be fired or will all the blame go on a coach again? Would Sweeney trade Poitras for Elias Lindholm? Poitras would get you a lot. Poitras is a guy that you could package for a guy like Lindholm. And I think that's an intriguing piece. Calgary is going to be rebuilding. I don't think that's crazy to think. Now, I don't think they do it. I don't, and here's why. They have struggled mightily to develop center talent. They have. They had to trade for Coyle. They had to trade for Zaka. They tried with guys. There was Stanika. Obviously, with Bergeron and Krejci for a long time, you didn't have to worry about that as much. But to me, I don't think that happens. You finally have the guy. You finally have someone that is a top 6 caliber center that you drafted and you are developing. I don't think they're going to let go of that guy. I that's my personal opinion. It's not inside information. I just don't think that they're going to do that. If the Bruins continue to underperform in the playoffs, will Sweeney be fired or will all the blame go on a coach again? No, I don't think Sweeney will be fired, and I don't think it's going to go on Montgomery. Last season was bad. That first round exit was bad, and it wasn't Sweeney's fault. You think back to that roster. I mean, if you want to put, and I have, the years for Bergeron and Krejci of 2015, post that draft to like 2019 as Sweeney's fault, sure. You're more than welcome to. And you're right. Like rough drafting and missing on picks and, some questionable deals. The Rick Nash thing, I can't really put on Sweeney because, he got, career ended due to concussions. Like there's nothing he can really do about that. But this, like even last year, you can't put on Sweeney. Like Sweeney went out and like it was a good roster going into the year. He added legitimate pieces. He put all the chips to the middle of the table. Like imagine, like going back to last year, imagine if Sweeney said, nope, I'm sitting on my hands. I'm not going to do anything. We're going to go into the playoffs with the roster we have. And they were out in the first round. Everyone would be pissed. Pissed. You'd call for his job. Bergeron and Krejci's last year and you don't go for it. Are you out of your mind? This is different. This is a different team. This is different expectations. I know they still are cup contenders in their eyes and they're playing like a cup contender. But no, I don't think Sweeney will be fired. They're still winning. So that goes back to that. Will the blame go on the coach? I mean, if Montgomery gets out coached again in a playoff series, then yeah, there's a legitimate point there to blame him. But they're winning too much. Like, like Jim Montgomery, won the best regular season team of all time last year. Now again, I value playoff success more 100%. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that, that's more important. It's not. You got to win in the playoffs, dude. Like that's the biggest thing. I'm not saying this to Montgomery. I'm saying dude as to everybody. I'm referencing all of you as dude. But But yeah, if he gets outcoached again, then yeah, there's a lot of blame to go around, and the seat gets hotter. I don't think they fire him. They do not. I don't think they fire Jim Montgomery if they're out in the first round. Um, but again, the seat gets hotter of like, hey, you're all this regular season success, and you aren't doing a heck of a lot in the playoffs. Like, let's go. So that might be more of it. But no, I don't see Sweeney or Montgomery getting fired at the end of the season if things continue the way they are and they lose in the playoffs in the first or second round. I don't see that. Now, if they collapse in these last bunch of months, then it's a totally different thing. And you've got then the seats get hot. But if they continue at this rate, I don't see that being a thing. I think this is the last question. Tom asked, how many Bruins Cups have been won and how many times they've been in the Stanley Cup final? Bruins have won 6 cups and they've been 20 times. 6 of 20 is not good. They got to figure that out. I mean, the Bergeron core went 1 for 3. Other cores did worse. So, 6 for 20. Got to be a little bit better there. I think Bruins fans, that's one that everybody will agree with me on. So that's that. I think we got everybody. I need a drink of water. And I don't think it's been that long. But this is always fun to do. We'll do one of these later in the season, and kind of get when things are a little bit changed up as the playoffs come around. And obviously we'll have podcasts. Bruins Beat will be out is twice a week. Poke the Bears twice a week. Pucks with Hags twice a week. Everything you can find over at the Bruins Ringside YouTube channel, which continues to grow, which is really fun to see. And it's fun because we can see what you guys are saying, chatting back and forth. So yeah, that's Bruins Beat. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. As always, we're sponsored by our good friends at Fanduel and HelloFresh. I'm actually going to make a HelloFresh before the game starts on Thursday night. I think it's either like tacos or like unfried chicken. So, whatever I'm feeling at the time is what I'm going to do. But anyways, that has been Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners are awesome. Thank you. Happy New Year. And we will see you guys later.